What's up, guys? Welcome back to the next episode of the Perennial Edge. My name is Teddy Savage, and I'm the founder of the Cultivation Effect, a leadership and culture strategy agency. Today, we're going to actually do some work, and you're going to get out some things that will allow you to quantify the soil that you're expecting to get sustainable outcomes from. In order for you to get the most out of this episode, I'm going to need three things from you. Number one, I need trust. I need you to be able to trust yourself in a way that you're going to score yourself out, not by how you feel like people perceive you, not how you aspire to be, but exactly where you are right now. Number two, I need vulnerability, okay? Vulnerability in a way that you understand you don't need to be perfect, and not being perfect is okay. No matter if you're in phase one, you're building into phase two, or you're already well established into your company or organization. And number three, and this probably is the most important thing that I'm going to ask of you guys today, I need ownership. I need you guys to own the gap between where you are and where you want to be. I need you to own taking the next logical step in terms of progress. And I need you guys to own the mindset and perspective that I, and me alone, am the author of what my next chapter looks like. So don't look anywhere. Don't even look to me to give you guys solutions. Look to me for understanding and clarity, and you build confidence through competence. Okay. Now, today's episode is going to be all about the root and analyzing or examining your soil. Now, here's the truth that a lot of people refute or don't quite get their hands wrapped around. You expect fruits or harvest or outcomes without first examining the soil that you're planting the seeds in. And as owners, operators, founders, entrepreneurs, or leaders of a group of individuals, it's easy to start looking at those lagging indicators like your joins, your success rates, your EBITDA, your revenues. All that kind of stuff is important, but it comes after you plant your seed into the soil. So here's how today's going to work. I got 4 quadrants: environments, patterns, alignment, and execution on the board. These are the 4 fundamental pillars of leadership, cultivated leadership. And I'm going to have 3 questions on each one of those quadrants. For each quadrant, I'm going to ask you guys to score yourself out 1 to 10. 1 being, I am nowhere near where I want to be. I don't have an understanding of where I am right now, and I don't have the first clue to take the next logical step. And 10 being, I'm well established. I do these things reflexively without thinking, consistently without fail. That's the scale between 1 and 10. All right, you ready? Here's the thing. I need you to get you a pen. I need you to get you some paper. I need you to lock in because we're about to get some work done. By the end of this episode, you should understand exactly what soil you're expecting your outcomes to be born from. All right, so number 1, our first pillar is environment. The environmental pillar of cultivated leadership is the most important. As a matter of fact, before I started the Cultivation Effect, I was in the fitness and health industry. And I can remember every January without fail, everybody coming in, yeah, Teddy, my New Year's resolution is to lose 35 pounds. It's to wake up early every single day. It's to stop eating junk food 3 out of 5 days in a week, Monday through Friday. And I'm saying, that's cool, that's excellent. And then come February, half of them aren't there. And then by March, none of them are there. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is this. The reason why they fell off in February and March was not because they didn't genuinely want to achieve those goals, right? It was because they expected themselves to achieve something new, something greater, by going back into the same environment that produced something they wanted to grow from. It doesn't make sense, does it? Exactly. All right, so here's how we're going to get into it. The first one, people. I want you to think right now about the people that you surround yourself with. Now that you got that idea, I want you to understand that you are the sum average of those 5 individuals. Yes, you are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. So that means you should hang around some people that are above you, that you see as aspirational, that I need to work to be able to achieve what these guys or girls have already. Just think the kind of level of a mentor. You should have at least 1 or 2 of those individuals. You should also have somebody in your peer group, somebody that's on the same trajectory as you. You guys aren't necessarily where you want to be, but you guys are certainly not where you started from. Those guys and girls are right there in the mud, rolling the sleeves up, doing the work of introspection. 1 or 2 of those people as well. And then maybe 1 individual that is lagging behind you, somebody that looks to you as a mentor, somebody that is just starting out, making the mistakes that you've already made, and needing to learn the lessons that you probably have about an 8 out of a 10 in terms of that understanding. But know this, the people that you surround yourself with are even doing two things to you. They're either pushing you forward, right, towards your next level of growth, or they're pulling you backwards and making you stay the same. I'm going to ask you to grade yourself out on a scale of 1 to 10 at the end, cumulatively of these three. But the first question is, are the people around you, those five, are they pulling you forward or bringing you back? Okay. The next question, it goes to your future and your past. Your environment is either going to promote you moving towards who you want to be in the future, right? It's the ingredients. Think of it like eggs and flour and nutmeg and all of the things that don't necessarily sound so appetizing as individual ingredients, but when put together, oh baby, they can produce the best tasting cake ever, right? So I want you to think of your environmental elements on either pushing you towards having a tasty cake of success, or if you're lacking any ingredient essential to taking that next step, whether it be time management, prioritization skills, proper goal setting skills, understanding what your leadership archetype and identity is. Maybe it's gap analysis. Here's the thing, your environmental element is going to tell you if you approach it with honesty and vulnerability. Okay. That's why I told you I want you to subtract that emotional component of, hey, I want to be at this stage, and start to get grounded in, if I'm honest and vulnerable with myself, I can take ownership in knowing that, yeah, I'm not where I want to be, but I am the one that's going to get me to the next level. That's where we need to be. So the question on number 2 with the environment is, are my ingredients right now pushing me into the future or keeping me anchored to the past version of myself? All right. Now, the third question as it pertains to our environmental cultivated leadership is your daily shadow test. This one, guys, I'm going to ask you. All right, put your thinking caps on. You know how they used to ask you in grade school, put your thinking cap on, right? If someone were to shadow you for 7 days, okay, you didn't know they were there, so you can't act out, you can't present, you can't perform, would they say that your daily environment is in alignment with your stated goals? All right, I'm going to take you right back to the story I told you about January New Year's resolutions. They had clearly stated goals. I want to lose 25 pounds. I want to start waking up early, and I want to stop eating junk food 3 out of 5 days a week. Very clear stated goals. However, if someone were to shadow them every single day of that week, what was happening was they had long lags of inactivity, right? They had moments where they were sleeping in or going to sleep late. And then they were choosing to eat out of convenience, right? And you know, when you eat out of convenience, you're never going to eat the right thing. Okay, so what I'm asking you is this. If I were to shadow you, or anybody were to shadow you, and you didn't know, would your daily environmental elements be in clear alignment with your stated goals? If not, score yourself out accordingly. So now think about it. The people that you surround yourself with, those five that you're the average of, are they pulling you forward or keeping you back? Your future and past ingredients to that successful cake, right? Are you missing any so it's keeping you back? Or do you have it completely dialed in, not only the ingredient, but the ratio levels as well? And then lastly, if I were to shadow you for 7 days, are your daily environmental elements going to be directly correlated to your stated goals? Think of all three, score yourself out, I should say, between 1 to 10, write it down. That's why I got the pen. That's why I told you to add your paper. Write it down. I don't want any guessing at the end. Number 2 is your patterns, okay? Your patterns of thought and behavior are usually what define you as an individual. Your patterns of thought create your patterns of behavior. Your patterns of behavior become your routine. Your pattern routines dictate your outcomes, your scalable and predictable outcomes. So this one is just as important as the one before. And you guys will start to see the 4 pillars of cultivated leadership are all interconnected, right? It's an ecosystem where each one independently is strong, but it ties directly into the next. Okay, so do you know the number one question for patterns? Do you know your patterns of constraint? The top 3 things. Now listen to me clearly. I want you to say to yourself this sentence. If it weren't for blank blank and blank, I would be exactly where I want to be right now, both as an individual and as a leader, both as a leader and as a professional. If it weren't for blank, blank, and blank, I would be exactly where I want to be. Those three blanks, fill it in right now. Okay. And if you are having trouble filling in those blanks, I want you to write that down as well as an asterisk. I need to dive into my patterns of constraint. I'll pause right here and tell you guys another story. Okay. When I work with clients, we always talk about goal setting, right? And every time I ask someone about their goal, I'm listening for a couple of things. I want to know if they're leading into their vision or their outcomes, their lagging indicators first. And then I'm just listening for, are they going to articulate the things that may be acting against them in that progress or in that process of attaining their lagging indicators or their success, right? If they don't, I know that we need to work on constraints because everybody has a vision board. Everyone understands what that means. But when I ask them, hey, what's your board of constraint? What is your board of sacrifice? What are your boards of barriers? I want those to be just as crystal clear and granular as what you're attaining or you're aspiring to attain. Okay. The next one is your response to stress. Guys and girls, if you're in business, you already know one common constant in any day, any week, any objective, any strategy is going to be stress, no matter what. And just like in the gym, there's positive stress, right? You could put your muscle under positive stress because that's what makes it grow. In business, you put yourself or your team under positive stress, but you have to do so strategically. What I want you guys to think about is this. When the stress is at its highest, what do I do by reflex? What is your pattern of response under stress? Do you overfunction? Meaning you just step in. If something is going awry on a team, you say, hey, look, Leroy, Lisa, I got it. Don't worry about it. Let me step in. Let me get it done. It's called overfunctioning. Do you become reclusive? Meaning you just disappeared, right? The stress is going up. The timeline has shortened. You're nowhere to be found. And listen, I'm not here to judge you. I don't want you to judge yourself. But if this is happening, I need you to know it so that we can correct it. And then is your pattern of response under stress something more like I stop right here and I need to be told what to do next before I start moving, right? It's either that flight or fear, that kind of a thing. So I want you guys to know exactly what that is. And if your pattern of response under stress is not necessarily something that is positively reinforcing, write it down because you will be the author of understanding it, zeroing in on the root cause of it, and then correcting it. That's right. Well, we understand, we zero in, we focus, then we correct. It is a process. The last one are your core values, your stated core values, not the core values of your company, not the core values you brought through from a previous chapter of professional employment, but your individual core values. Are they directly a reflection of your daily patterns of thought and behavior? That one is simple. It is simple, but you know how it goes in life, right? The simplest things are the ones that avoid or evade us the most. I want you to ask yourself this very plainly. My core values are X. You got your pen. Listen, we're going to be here for a little bit. Write them down. What are your top 3 to 5 core values? Boom. Write them down. The next column, right, as you're writing down, I want you to write down what are my patterns of behavior? What are my top 3 to 5 patterns of behavior? Good or bad, it doesn't matter. I don't want you to assign positive or negative to that. Just write it down. If you think about it, what do I do reflexively? Top 3 to 5 patterns of behavior. Then in that third column, I want you to write down what your patterns of thought are. Top 3 to 5. Top 3 patterns of thought. Don't think too much about it. Don't think what Teddy might want to hear. I'm not checking your grade. We're not grading this, but we are being honest. We are being vulnerable. We are taking ownership, right? Write them down. Then on a scale from 1 to 10, all 3, do I know my patterns of constraint? No or yes, emphatically. Do I know what my pattern of response is under heightened stress? 1, I have no clue. 10, absolutely. Here they are. Here's what they mean. Here's how I reinforce it. X, Y, and Z. The next one are my core values directly in alignment with my patterns of thought and my patterns of behavior. This, I want you to score out on a scale of 1 to 10. Write it down. You got your paper, you got your pen. Listen, by the end of it, I'm going to ask you to do some quick arithmetic. Don't you be pulling out a calculator or trying to chat GPT, because this would be simple mathematics. All right. All right. Now, listen, the next one, pattern of alignment, or I should say your pillar of alignment of cultivated leadership. This one is important because, again, story time. When I go and I work with these companies, organizations of large scale, they could be multi-unit, multi-state, multi-continent even. And we talk about, here's our KPIs, right? Our KPIs are clearly stated. These are our key performance indices, and this is what matters most to us. And I'm like, cool. I love that, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. You know how that goes. But then when I go in and I start to learn and I start to observe and I start to talk to the people that are actually bringing things to life that will eventually yield those KPIs, I see that we're not necessarily in step. There's a miscommunication. There's a gap between what we expect and what we actually do. That's called alignment or misalignment. Okay. So the first question is, your time and your priority, are they aligned if I were to look at your schedule or your calendar? This is important because we can say something is top priority, but when I say, okay, open up your Outlook calendar, if I look at your Outlook calendar and not more than 70% of your time, your personal capital, is allotted to this priority, then it's not really a priority. Secondly, if you have 5 priorities, then you have no priorities. Okay. You have to assign magnitude to say that there's one most important thing, because it drives the whole thing 1 inch closer to our desired outcomes. Everything else should funnel into that, because if you have too many competing priorities, you'll be going 1,000 miles an hour, but not really going anywhere. Okay. Number 2 is tension. When you have tension in your individual sphere, you're going to have tension as you influence your team. That's just one of those things where, as a leader, we understand we have both influence and impact. Okay. Your alignment says, if I expect my team to be able to perform under heightened stress, and I expect them to do so consistently without fail, that means that I need to be able to do the same thing. So my expectations of them need to be, you guessed it, aligned with my expectations of me. Okay. Again, think about that. Right. It's going to go into that scale of 1 to 10. Lastly, ownership. This is a big one. Now, I want to ask you to think about ownership in 2 different ways. Okay. Number one, do you take ownership of the things that you bring to the table in the same way that you would ask your team to take ownership of the way they contribute to our overall success? The reason why I ask this is because so often organizations do not take ownership of when we fail as a group. What they'll do instead is they'll assign blame and they'll say, well, we didn't hit that KPI, so we must have a people problem. It must be the people that we're asking to do the thing is the reason why the thing couldn't get to the finish line. That to me means that that company or organization or department even is operating in a state of self-deception. And self-deception, as it pertains to leadership, is the primary catalyst to conflict. And when you have conflict in any department, any team, any business or organization, you will never be able to get to your desired outcomes sustainably. You may have some level of success, right? You may be able to achieve it because you guys had a good quarter or you had a very promising event that was very fruitful, but you won't be able to replicate it over and over and over again, which should always be our primary objective as a company or organization. We should be able to sustain our level of performance and output no matter what. But if you're not complicit with our success and our failure, then there is misalignment as it pertains to your ownership. Okay. Now, think about it like this. When was the last time that you, as a founder, went to your team and said, hey, we didn't hit the goal, and here's why I feel like I could have contributed more? Or when was the last time you went to your people and said, hey, listen, guys, as a leader, I want to show up as my best self. I want to ask you guys, what's the one big thing that I can be doing better that would allow you to contribute in a more confident manner to our desired collective outcome, right? If you haven't done that in the last week, month, quarter, year, whatever it may be, then there's a gap. And I'm going to repeat this because it is one of the important elements of today's work together. We're not perfect. We're not expected to be perfect. And perfect is the poison to progress, right? So, what I want you guys to do is to understand that there's going to be a gap. If at the end of this thing, you score yourself out at 10, 10, 10, 10, I'm going to say that that's probably an indicator of introspection and awareness, right? So, I want you to think long and hard about the questions that I'm asking you. Rewatch this episode if it's gone too quickly for you to think about it and really sit with it for a bit. Ask yourself the tough questions. How am I showing up? How do I think that I'm showing up? How do I want people to think that I'm showing up? And how am I really showing up? Okay. That's the alignment. Our last quadrant is all about execution. When we talk about the four pillars of cultivated leadership, execution is how it all comes to life in front of you, how you can observe it, right? And it's not about executing the big thing. Now, story time, but I want you to think of this story as a introspective story. This is your story. I want you to think about when you were in school. Maybe you're still in school. Maybe you're in college or high school or whatever you are. And you had a big test or presentation coming up, or you had a big meeting with a lot of stakeholders in there. Now, I want you to think about how much you prepared for that moment. Like you studied, I'm sure you studied hours on hours on hours on end. I'm sure you had copious notes that you were combing through to pull out all of the different vernacular and vocabulary. You had all of the supporting data that would feed into your theory, right? Your thesis. You had all of these things lined up. You knew exactly what outfit you were going to wear, exactly what scent, what fragrant, what cologne you were going to wear. You knew exactly how you were going to do your hair, right? I don't have to worry about that because I'm bald, but I got to do my beard a certain way. So you knew all of that. Now, you went in, and I'm sure because of your preparation, you performed at a high level. Now I'm going to ask you to think about all the other things that go on outside of those big magnitude moments. And how do you show up for those moments? Do you prepare in the same way? Do you understand the desired outcome and objective in the same way? Do you look at yourself and you reflect in the mirror in the same way, beyond what meets the eye? What I'm getting at is this, guys. Execution isn't about how we show up in those bright moments. It's about how consistently we show up in those other moments. Okay. So the first question is, are you honoring that notion? Number one, do you honor the smaller moments in the same way you do the ones of great magnitude? Simply put, sit with it, think about it. It's going to be synthesized into our final score. The next one, denying, right? These are, when they end in ing, they're action words, they're verbs, okay? Are you denying where you need to go because you're operating in that self-deception mode, right? And I don't say that to, again, pass any sort of judgment, but I would venture to say the majority of us are in some state of denial. And I'll tell you how this one comes to life as well. If I go to let's say it was the product department of a particular organization and we missed our quarterly budget, we missed our KPI, and I'm asking them, what was the barriers to our success? What were the barriers to success that kept us from getting to where we wanted to be? If they start in and start saying that there was external things, we didn't have the tools we needed, the software would never quite compute in the way that we wanted to, the AI tools weren't really generating the outcomes that we thought we would need. Like, if all of these things are what we're leading with, then I'm going to say there's some sort of denial happening, because all of them are centered and rooted back to the individual. And we can't do anything about the tool, the AI, the software. We can't do anything about these external elements, but we can do everything about what we do. And I'm not saying that we are the primary catalyst to us not getting to where we want to be, but we have to be open, both eyes open, in terms of reflecting on our complicit nature and executing. Okay. So the question is this: are you denying how you show up in those success or failure moments? Scale of 1 to 10. One being, yeah, I'm not really allowing myself to take onus. 10 being, you know what? I do understand when I am operating in self denial. I check myself, I reprogram my thoughts, and then I come differently. Okay. That's how you would think about that. The last one is pursuing. Okay. Now, again, all of these things are verbs, meaning we're moving, we're doing something, we're operating out of a state of action. All right. When I ask you this question, I want you to sit with it and pause with it. I want you to fold your arms. I want you to stroke your chin. I want you to put your hand on your temple, right? Are you pursuing your growth through incremental steps of improvement, or are you pursuing those lagging indicators of revenue, acquisition, EBITDA, whatever it is that you feel like you assign success to? The reason why I asked that question, what are you pursuing, is if you're pursuing the right side of the equal sign, okay, then you'll never achieve sustainable success. That is important because the left side of the equal sign, if you guys do any sort of math, you've been in math class, even though you hated math class, right? I understand that. But you also understand you don't arrive at the solution on the right side of the equal sign unless you start to solve the problem on the left side of the equal sign. You understand your constants, you solve for your variables, you add, subtract, multiply, or divide, right? You PEMDAS that thing, and then you get to a solution. And then you get to your lagging indicators, and then you get to your revenue, your EBITDA, your acquisitions, your joins, your product sales, whatever it may be. So I'm going to ask you again, now that you have framed it in your mind, what I'm really telling you, okay? Are you pursuing the left side or the right side of the equal sign? You know the truth. I'm just asking a question because at the end of the day, the clarity comes through awareness. The awareness comes through vulnerability. The vulnerability is unlocked through truth. Okay. So, scale on 1 to 10, one being I'm not honoring, right, any of the complicit nature of me being a part of our failures or success. Two, I'm denying how I'm showing up, right? And three, I'm not pursuing the left side. I'm only thinking about the right side. That would be a one. All right. Opposed to that is the 10. You're doing all three of these things at the highest level consistently without fail, right? Now, all right. Do not pull out your calculator. If I see you guys, I'm looking, if I see you guys pulling out the calculator, it's gonna be a problem. Okay. I need you to be able to do some quick math for me. Scale or score yourself out. You should have been writing these down along the way, but if you have not, go ahead and do it right now. Scale of 1 to 10, your environment. Scale of 1 to 10, your patterns. Scale of 1 to 10, your alignment. Scale of 1 to 10, your execution. Give me the sum of all four quadrants, all four pillars of cultivated leadership. Okay. Now, while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you how you can understand what that sum is telling you. If you score between a 32 or a 40, outstanding. Okay. That means that you've got healthy soil, you're growing and you're growing consistently, and the growth is occurring at a pace that you can keep up with. And you should just continue to cultivate. Again, a 40 out of 40 means that you have no room to grow. And if you've already peaked, I don't know. Where do you go from there, right? But I do want you to understand if you're scoring out between a 32 to a 40, you're in a good spot. That means your soil is healthy. If you're scoring out between a 24 to a 31, that means that you have growth potential. That's really good. You have a strong foundation. Everything that we're building is fortified by the strong foundation, the soil that we've already cultivated. That's great. But that also means that we have several roots that need attention. Now, I want you guys to think about, because I really like analogies. I think they really bring the message to a head. Okay. So if you thought about if you had a seed to an apple tree, And this seed came from like the best apple tree farm ever. So you knew that it should produce great fruit. If you were to put that seed into toxic soil, it would not yield the fruit that you think that it would. Now, if you're scoring out a 24 to a 31, that means that your soil is pretty good, but not as good as it can be. Okay. So I want you to examine exactly where you scored out the least, and that's the route that we attack next. If you scored out a 16 to a 23, that means that your soil is compacted, right? That means that things are happening against you and growth is possible, but it's restricted. It could be restricted by our environmental elements. Maybe it's restricted by patterns of thought, or maybe it's how we respond under high stress situations. Maybe it's restricted by our alignment, our time and priority, or it could be how we execute the smaller things as opposed to those big magnitude moments. Whatever it may be, we have to identify what's compacting our soil so we can cultivate it, aerate it, open it up, and allow the seed to germinate and produce. So if you score below a 16 in that 4 quadrants, it's okay. The world's not going to end tomorrow. And as long as you have breath in your lungs, you have an opportunity to grow. It just means your root system is failing you right now. It means that you need to focus a little bit more attention on the left side of the equal side. And I know it's so hard sometimes because we live in a world as entrepreneurs and professionals that sometimes requires us to be transactional in our mindset, right? We want to make sure that we're achieving that so we can make the money, so we can reinvest in a business, so we can do all of these other things. But if you scored a 16 or below, it means you're spending too much time on the right side and not enough time figuring out the problem on the left side. Now, I want you to think about it like this. Your conditions of cultivated leadership, these 4 quadrants, are going to tell you exactly what you need to know to unlock the next level. Okay. And today's episode, and it's winding down, is all about examining the soil that will allow you to progress. I'm not going to create a false expectation or pretense saying that once you actually hear this episode, you'll be exactly where you need to be. That's not quite how it goes. But what you will get is clarity. You'll be able to say to yourself, with objectivity and not subjectivity, my soil score is this. The reason why is that is because I scored out my environment here, my patterns there, my alignment was here, and my execution was there. You will then have a better understanding of which quadrant needs the most priority right now. Not to say that the other 3 quadrants aren't equally important, but you'll understand where you're lagging the most. And then lastly, and I said this at the beginning of the episode, you take ownership in taking the next logical step of growth. I want you to measure your efforts not by how far we can go towards our aspirations, but how well we can matriculate towards our next step. You will never summit a mountain or end a marathon by thinking about the finish line. I want you to think about the next step, the next step, the next step. Oh, I tripped. Why did I trip? Learn from that trip. The next step. That's how we want to think of ourselves as cultivated leaders, as culture strategists, and as successful leaders and professionals. Guys, I had so much fun. It was awesome. This was your Examine Your Soil Rooted episode. And again, guys, come on back because we're talking about the genesis and how things start. But with any genesis comes another chapter. So I know you guys have probably, if not yet, saw the episode with Justin or saw the episode that Justin and I did together. It doesn't matter if you look at them out of order. Just make sure you look at each episode in this 4-part series. Hey, listen, I believe in you. I see you for who you are. I want you to see yourself for who you are. Keep working, keep cultivating. Peace.